Sweat streaked the grime on Lieutenant Colonel Rupert Thornelow's face as he lay flat on his stomach on the dusty track beside the Shamalan Canal. Gently, he prodded the baked mud in front of him with a bayonet, checking to see if the Taliban had buried an improvised explosive device there. In the searing, early afternoon heat, the commanding officer of the Welsh Guards was doing the most stomach-churning and thankless task in Afghanistan. One slip and he could be blown to smithereens. Even worse, a failure to find what had caused the beeping on his Valon metal detector might cause the deaths of others in the long convoy behind him. Thornelow was meticulous and almost obsessively rigorous in all he did. He checked everything, thought through each eventuality, and left nothing to chance. He was taking a long time to make sure that there was no bomb in this tiny patch of Helmand. Scouring a road for IEDs was normally the job of the lowliest guardsman, but Thornelow would never order a man to do something he would not do himself. He drove his men hard, but himself much harder. He believed in leading from the front and by example. Just short of 40, Thornelow was destined to be a general and perhaps to run the army one day. He had been the Defence Secretary's military assistant, an influential appointment at the heart of Whitehall as the government wrestled with how to wage war in Afghanistan. Now he was there, commanding his regiment in battle. 6 days earlier, on the 25th of June 2009, the Welsh Guards had begun to fight their way up the track beside the Shamalan, designated as Route Cornwall, in an attempt to seal the canal as part of Operation Panther's Claw, or Panchai Palang in Pashto. Thornelow had fretted about the ground beside the Shamalan, on which he was now prostrate, clashing with brigade staff about what he viewed as inadequate reconnaissance. In his 10 weeks in Helmand, he had pleaded for more men and more equipment. During the planning of Panther's Claw, he had argued for troops to be dropped close to the canal by helicopter, but it was judged too dangerous. Sure enough, Route Cornwall had proved more isolated and exposed than the planners had assumed. Furthermore, it was crumbling under the weight of vehicles trundling up and down. 2 days earlier, a Viking armoured track vehicle had toppled into the canal and trapped 7 Welsh Guardsmen inside as their compartments rapidly flooded with water. 2 were unconscious and had turned blue by the time the rear door was forced open, but they were resuscitated and survived. Once the euphoria over the life-saving heroics had subsided, however, many of the remaining guardsmen were left almost paralysed with fear. The Vikings, they said, were coffins on tracks. Soldiers were threatening to refuse to get back into one. Young men were vomiting before patrols. Some had been evacuated because of battle shock. In battle, loss of momentum can be militarily disastrous. Thornelow wanted to witness the battle on the Shamalan and gird his men for a renewed push up the canal. With helicopters in very short supply, the previous month he had complained to the brigade that we all know there are not enough. Thornelow knew that he would have to travel by vehicle and that it would be dangerous. He had decided to spend the next 10 days commanding his men from the front, and to get there he was riding in an 18-vehicle logistics convoy. To assess the terrain and stop the growing sense of dread taking root among young guardsmen, he deliberately chose to ride top cover, standing with his legs inside the Viking and manning a machine gun. In addition, his decision to be a member of the Barmer team meant that he was in the lead vehicle of the convoy, given the call sign 32 Alpha and codenamed Exorcist. Operation Barmer was the name randomly selected by a Ministry of Defence computer to describe what Thornelow was now doing, using a metal detector to search for IEDs and to dig down to check any suspicious areas. Now that the Taliban were using low metal content IEDs, fitted with graphite rather than metal connectors, it didn't even take a mistake to die.